2 years ago, I finished off the Christmas marathon by talking about the Mother 3 fan translation while also just reviewing the entire game in general. Mother 3 is one of the most unique, bizarre, and elusive games Nintendo has ever signed off on. So much so that after 16 years, they still refused to officially localize the game and release it outside of Japan, and it fell to the fans to keep it alive. The fan translation is one of the single greatest fan game efforts to this day. Translating Itoi's bizarro, quirky dialogue into English in an adequate fashion for an entire 30-hour RPG? That is beyond nuts. The game was already a phenomenal artistic endeavor, but to see fans come together and create a ROM hack of the game that English speakers can play for themselves, that's what we call hardcore. Even though us non-Japanese folks can now play a more than satisfactory version of the game, Mother 3 is still a game of mystery, and a lot of that has to do with its development. If you're an EarthBound / Mother fanboy, or a motherfucker as it's known in the community, you probably already know this, but the development of Mother 3 was a very long and arduous battle, starting all the way back on the Nintendo 64 disk drive. Now that's a bad sign right there. Trailers and screenshots were released to the public at places like Space World and E3 a few years in a row, alluding to an incredibly ambitious RPG, a polygonal thrill ride of baller-ass 3D graphics, and a roller coaster of drama and emotion. Literally. It all looked very promising and would have been the N64's much-needed RPG that wasn't Quest 64. Unfortunately, it was not to be, as a result of the combination of newfound complications of the third dimension, the commercial failure of the 64DD, and having to repeatedly scale back the scope of the project. It was delayed for several years until they decided that it was no longer practical to continue. It's like Miyamoto says, a delayed game is eventually cancelled, but a rushed game is whatever. Please let me eat in peace, I haven't slept since Tuesday. The team's ambition had gotten the better of them, and the project as it was initially intended was no more. Keep in mind that this is the abridged SparkNotes version of the story, and I recommend looking into it yourself if you want to learn more, because the development of this game is long and storied enough to be its own long-ass video essay. But the point is, this huge 3D adventure was way deep into development, and then it all just disappeared. And even though we did get Mother 3 eventually, it's kind of a bittersweet victory, because as beautiful and as satisfying of a conclusion to that trilogy that game ended up being, this other Mother was denied, and you other brothers can't deny. Although many elements of Mother / EarthBound 64 did end up in the final game, the two products both look very similar and different at the same time, to the point that it's hard not to wonder what it could have been like. According to some semi-unconfirmed history, the game was supposed to originally be even darker and more terrifying than the final product was, and judging from this polygonal zombie bleeding profusely out of his eyeball, I'll definitely buy that. The reason I've taken you on this big History Channel lesson is to give you a little bit of context going into the topic of today, which is the wonderful EarthBound 64 exploration demo. This is a very early demo of something that, from what I understand, is eventually going to be a big-time recreation of EarthBound 64, the game that never was. I have made no secret of my love for beta recreations, but typically those beta recreations are of games that did eventually come out, giving the creators a base game to work off of. With this game, as far as I know, they had nothing. No such ROM of Mother 64 has been publicly made available, and even though I dream of it every night, I won't hold my breath. Although it isn't a complete impossibility when you consider the great Giga Leak of 2020, the leak of the unreleased Duke Nukem Forever build, or even the leak of an entire ROM of Dinosaur Planet for the N64, it's hard not to get our hopes up, but until then, recreation projects like this can easily fill that void. EarthBound 64 Exploration Demo is a demo to show off some early areas in the EarthBound 64 recreation project. It focuses on the village of Tazmily and some of the immediate surrounding areas. In this game, you play as Flint as he was in the pre-release material, with his badass blue trench coat thing, looking straight out of Red Guy Redead shins. Of all the playable characters, Flint was probably shown off the most often in the pre-release material, so it makes sense that they would start there. There isn't really any gameplay yet beyond exploration, which makes sense because this is the exploration demo. But I will say this, the walking animation looks very good, considering this is intended to look like an N64 title. It is worth noting that this game is not a ROM hack of an existing game, nor is it an N64 ROM at all. It was made using the Godot engine, but the visuals look incredibly accurate to the pre-release materials on which they are based, and also very authentic to the Nintendo 64, flaws and all. If the game ever does become a whole thing, I hope there are some options to mess around with the graphics, but the authenticity is noted and very much appreciated. So far, the areas that are open to exploration are the main town square of Tazmily with some NPCs hanging around. You cannot yet interact with them as far as I can tell, but it is a good sign that they're there. You can enter the early version of Yado Inn, or Yado Inn, I don't know how to pronounce it, and there are 3 different bedrooms you can choose from with a surprising amount of detail. There's the area just north of the village with the bell tower. Leader isn't there, but judging from other details like the industrial materials in the forest area, this demo is probably supposed to take place at the point in the story where Leader is not around to ring the bell. I mean, it's either that or they just didn't model him yet. He was always one of my favorite characters. Then of course there's the Sunshine Forest, which looks very beautiful. There's a lot of detail and the atmosphere is very thick, especially for a game of its time. Granted, that could mean a lot of things because the game was delayed a billion times. I really like the music. A lot of the tunes will be familiar to the existing game, but they're different enough that keen listeners will be able to pick up on it. Even though some of EarthBound 64's music is publicly available, from what I understand, I imagine some of this is being recreated manually based on the existing songs from the GBA version, and they sound great, especially the Inn, whose name I don't know how to pronounce. Even though the state of this game is limited, I am very excited to hear more about this project as it keeps getting updated, and if it could be a whole ass game one day, I will be blown away. Also, it is worth noting that on the release video for this demo, one of the people behind the project said that they are looking for more, quote, programmers and stuff, unquote. And even though that was back in September, it might still be the case. I don't know because I'm not on the dev team, but I really like fan projects and such, especially for things like Mother. So I thought I would mention it in the video here on the off chance that maybe some of you are into that kind of stuff, and if I could help this game get made even tangentially by letting aspiring dev people in my community know that this is a thing that they might be able to help with, that would make me very happy. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching my video.
Ho ho ho! Thank you for watching today's episode. It's always great to see more love for the Mother series. It is my favorite series after all. Or, well, one of them anyway. Now remember to tune in tomorrow, same time, same place, and be prepared because this next game is quite colossal in scope. Ho ho!